I'm a savage! Oh! What you gotta say now? What you gotta say now?
She was badly, beaten.
Oh my God.
This is the ultimate goal. I have become love.
Black eye, busted lip, a lot of knots all over her head.
They allege everything from to sex trafficking to being drugged.
Disturbing new surveillance video shows Sean Diddy Combs attacking his then-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura.
To find out that, I spent all these years writing these songs for him to my friend to, is just disgusting.
Sean Combs is a rapper and record executive, popularly known by his stage names Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, or Diddy. He came to fame in the early 1990s with his record label Bad Boy Records, which evidently lifted him to the prestige of a hip-hop mogul. In honor of his status and achievements, Diddy received the Lifetime Achievement Award at the BET Awards in 2022. During his acceptance speech, he gave a special shout-out to the people who were there for him. Among them was a talented and beautiful artist named Cassie, who he specifically thanked for holding him down in the dark times.
I gotta give a special thank you to the people that was really there for me. Cassie for holding me down in the dark times. Love.
The truth, however, is that Cassandra Ventura, known as music artist Cassie, was held down by Diddy and endured over a decade of his violent behavior and disturbed demands. For Cassie, the dark times were those she allegedly spent trapped by Diddy in a cycle of abuse, violence, and sex trafficking, among other violent and unlawful acts by him. Cassie met Diddy in late 2005 or early 2006 after he heard her first single playing in a club and expressed interest in signing her to his label Bad Boy Records.
So when he was doing that, I heard he also had a young lady that was with him named Cassie that had a record out. And I started hearing this record that was haunting me in the clubs. And it was, it was Cassie's record, Me and You. And I would hear it everywhere I was at. And so I kept asking, what record is that? And Gwen told me that it was Ryan, exactly, it was Cassie. When I saw her and I met her and I saw this DVD on her, hopefully we can play that. That's what kind of made me really fall in love with the project, because I saw something more than just records. I saw something that there was a personality there. There was something that, the whole world could fall in love with. At the time, Cassie was 19 years old and Diddy was 37 years old. Within months, in February 2006, she signed a 10-album deal with his record label. Her first self-titled album, Cassie, was released in August 2006, debuting at number 4 on the US Billboard 200. I wanted, Cassie to, everybody to meet Cassie. Y'all know that's Cassie. And hear the story directly from Miles, and then really get down to some business about, just so we can be on the same page of what the plan is, as far as from Tommy's concerned, and from where we're concerned as also a label and one in Atlantic, so everybody's on the same page.
Diddy's recognition and glorification of Cassie's naivete proved to set the groundwork for his manipulative and coercive romantic and sexual relationship with her, a woman nearly 2 decades younger. Within a year of signing with his label, Diddy became deeply entrenched in Cassie's life, almost immediately asserting possession and control over her, and inserting himself into all aspects of her career and personal life. In November 2006, he invited her to perform his song Come to Me along with him at the MTV Europe Music Awards in Copenhagen, Denmark. During hair and makeup leading up to the performance, Cassie's hairstylist and Diddy's makeup artist told her he was interested in her. Cassie shrugged off the gossip and expressed disgust given the large age gap between her and the president of her record label. At one point, Cassie endured a brief hospital stay. After becoming healthy, She recalls going to a club with her friends. When Diddy saw her out, he reprimanded her, telling her to go home and take care of herself. At the time, she thought her record label was looking out for her well-being and Diddy had her best interests in mind. In time, she would realize his actions were much more sinister in intention. Although Diddy knew Cassie was in a relationship at the time, and even though he was publicly in a relationship with now deceased Kim Porter, he nevertheless pursued Cassie. At an after-party in a hotel suite following her 21st birthday party, their work relationship was forced in a problematic direction. Cassie recalls Diddy allegedly pulling her into a bathroom and forcibly kissing her against her will. She immediately ran out of the bathroom and the hotel suite and cried. She told her best friend at the time about what happened, but was too scared to tell anyone else. Despite her clear rejection of Diddy's advances, he continued to demand Cassie spend time with him. On one particular night around September 2007, he insisted on taking her out. Cassie complied, fearing that rejecting his request would have repercussions for her album deal under his label to which she was now signed. Diddy picked her up from her apartment in Manhattan in a blue luxury vehicle. Cassie was surprised that when she got into the car, he was already intoxicated. He then handed her a pill and told her to take it. Immediately, she asked what the pill was, but Diddy dismissed her and told her she would like it. Cassie later learned the pill was Ecstasy, something she had never tried and did not want to try. This was the first time Diddy got Cassie high. In early fall of 2007, Cassie recalls Diddy flexed his power and influence when he paid a promoter to create a fake flyer for a party hosted by her. This fake posting allowed her to have an excuse to go to Miami, Florida, and get her away from her boyfriend by using the guise of a legitimate event she had to attend. Cassie was uncomfortable with the fake flyer, but because the request to go to Miami was made by the owner of her record label, and because she was scared to go against his wishes and face repercussions to her emerging career, she agreed to join Diddy in Florida. During this trip to Miami, Diddy allegedly provided Cassie with copious amounts of drugs. She became more intoxicated than she ever had before, and her intoxication lasted throughout the weekend trip. As she wanted Diddy to continue to support her career, she felt she could not refuse him urging her to take more drugs. At that point, he had her exactly where he wanted. Doped up, Diddy allegedly had sexual intercourse with Cassie during this trip. Within 2 years of meeting him, Cassie found herself lured into the immediate circle of her boss, the owner of her record label, and one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry. Diddy's aggressive and demanding approach to those he worked with made it impossible for anyone to challenge him, and Cassie soon learned that he insisted on blind loyalty from everyone in his inner circle. Around 2008 or 2009, Diddy began to rent an apartment in Manhattan for Cassie. The apartment was within walking distance of his New York residence. All aspects of her life were funded and controlled by either Diddy or his management companies, from her career right down to her makeup and clothing. This mass intrusion into her life secured his control over the young and impressionable Cassie by introducing her to a drug-fueled lifestyle that kept her complacent and compliant. He first introduced her to opiates around 2008, and according to Cassie, he would often have pills and other drugs out in the open like candy. Diddy also became deeply involved in Cassie's personal life, with his personal staff attending to her day-to-day travel and other needs, including medical care. On multiple occasions, he had her personal medical records sent directly to his email address. For instance, when Cassie began experiencing memory loss, potentially due to excessive drug use and possible head injuries caused by Diddy's beatings, which she soon would experience, her MRI results were provided directly to him. Diddy also repeatedly arranged for his staff to drive Cassie to certain doctor's appointments. In this way, he exerted ownership over her, The 6 signs from what she thought was innocent soon became clear. Early in their relationship, he asked Cassie what she called her grandfather. When she said she referred to her grandfather as Pop Pop, Diddy perversely insisted that she refer to him with that nickname. What started as a whirlwind of celebrity meetings and drug and alcohol-fueled parties quickly turned frightening and violent. Cassie was also exposed to the intense violence that pervaded Diddy's rise to fame. For example, on one occasion when they were using substances together in his home, one of his security staff barged in and announced that Suge Knight, a longtime rival of Diddy, was spotted at Mel's Drive-In Diner in Los Angeles.
Any artists out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star and don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the record, dancing, come to death row.
Diddy began to get dressed, retrieved multiple guns from a safe and ran out of his home to where he believed Knight was dining. Cassie became terrified and began to cry. On at least 2 occasions, Diddy demanded that Cassie hold his gun in her purse. There was no clear reason why he required her to do so, except to reinforce to his young girlfriend that he was violent, powerful, and dangerous. Over the next decade, multiple times each year, he would violently beat her, leaving bruises on her body. After every instance of abuse, he used his money and power to orchestrate extensive efforts to hide the evidence, including trapping her in hotels for days at a time to let her bruises heal. In January 2009, after Diddy learned that Cassie spoke to another music manager at a party in Los Angeles, he became enraged. She had hoped speaking to this manager would allow her to further grow her career, and that Diddy would be happy for her, but instead, he became extremely angry and pulled her out of the club where the party was taking place. In the car leaving the club, he beat her, pushing her into a corner of the vehicle and stomping on her face. When the car arrived at his residence, Cassie attempted to run away, but Diddy followed her and proceeded to again kick her in the face. She was bleeding profusely and was ushered into his home, where she began to throw up from the violent assault. Upon recognizing the damage he had done and the physical evidence of his abuse, he panicked and forced his staff to bring her to a hotel suite at the London Hotel in Los Angeles, where she was required to stay for a week. During this stay, as her injuries from the beating healed, Cassie began to fully realize that Diddy's tremendously loyal network not only knew about and witnessed his assault, but also that these witnesses were not willing to do anything meaningful to stop his behavior. She recognized that she was powerless and that reporting him to the authorities would not alter his status or influence, but would merely give him another excuse to hurt her. While in the hotel, she asked to go home to her parents, but Diddy wouldn't let her leave. He proceeded to instruct his assistant to purchase excessive amounts of gifts for Cassie, which were delivered to the hotel room where she remained trapped. She was terrified, isolated, and unable to see a pathway out of his abusive hold on her life. She found herself becoming numb to the abuse she was experiencing and became entirely beholden to Diddy's demands. She began to blindly follow his instructions out of fear of again being on the receiving end of a vicious beating. Her volatile and abusive partner, who also owned her label and therefore held her future success in his hands, had fully exerted control over every aspect of her life. Within a few months of beginning a romantic relationship with 40-year-old Diddy, the 22-year-old Cassie felt beholden to his whims and demands. While in New York City, he told her that he wanted to engage in a fantasy of his called voyeurism. Diddy said that it would turn him on if he saw her take another male. The first time, he hired a man and brought him to his home in Los Angeles. The man, Diddy, and Cassie wore masquerade masks and ingested drugs. Diddy directed her to perform sexual acts with this man while he watched them. He pleasured himself while he directed Cassie and the man to do specific sexual acts. The entire encounter lasted multiple days. Diddy began to call the arrangement a freak-off. He would repeatedly tell Cassie at random moments that he wanted a freak-off, and she was eventually expected to facilitate the location and the hiring of male sex workers. At certain points during their relationship, he would insist on a freak-off weekly. Diddy would repeatedly tell Cassie that this practice was our thing and our secret. Cassie was eventually instructed to use websites and escort services to find male sex workers to participate in the freak-offs. According to her, Diddy told her to search for large black male genitalia on the website. Sometimes he would pay to fly male sex workers to his location, including to multiple cities in the United States as well as abroad. He required Cassie and his staff to help him make these arrangements. Diddy always supplied her and the sex worker with copious amounts of drugs before and during the freak-offs. Cassie was given ecstasy, cocaine, ketamine, marijuana, and alcohol in excessive amounts, which allowed her to disassociate during these horrific encounters. It became commonplace to get IV fluids in the days after a freak-off to recover from the excessive substances pushed upon her. Diddy would then instruct her and the sex workers to speak to each other, and then would specifically tell Cassie instructions like, "Grab that big black," as he directed her to perform for him.
Red says it was only a few months ago that Cassie told her what was really going on that night in 2015, that it all stemmed from the music executive wanting her to take part in what he called a freak-off against her will.
What did Cassie tell you about these freak-offs? You know, that he would hire these, like, sex workers and, like, they would have, you know, sex with her or whatever, and he would watch and tell them what to do.
In addition to directing her and pleasuring himself, Diddy would use devices to film her having intercourse with the hired male. He treated the forced encounter as a personal art project, adjusting the candles he used for lighting to frame the videos he took. During some freak-offs, he would become extremely intoxicated and would hit Cassie in front of the male sex workers.
Diddy hosted what he called freak-offs, sex parties so brutal that the young men and women would sometimes vomit and pass out from being drugged. They would be beaten, they would be...
Cassie was repulsed by his demands, but between the physical beating and recognizing his incredible power and incredible temper, she became petrified of her partner and boss and felt that she could not say no. Frequently, her anxiety before a freak-off would become so great that she would become physically ill, sometimes to the point of vomiting. While kneeling over the toilet, Diddy would shame her into performing for him, eventually forcing her to get up and proceed with the encounter.
She told me the only time he was willing to do anything or work on her music, go through any plans, any of that, was when she had a freak off. So all of our music, all my work, to find out that, like, I spent all these years writing these songs for him to rape my friend to, like, is just disgusting.
Around August 2015, for example, in the middle of a surprise birthday dinner for her 29th birthday, he insisted that she leave the party and go to a hotel for a freak-off. When she expressed she did not want to go, he had her cornered by his security staff to force her to leave with him.
Which took place during Cassie's 29th birthday in 2015. Red says Diddy showed up at karaoke, where Cassie and a group of friends were celebrating.
So he had her backed into the corner, and he was, like, cussing her out with his hand in her face.
Later that night, Red, who was staying at Cassie's home, says she awoke to screaming.
He's standing in the, like, living room area, and she's there, and he was like, "Emotional singing, there you are." And I just was like, oh, he's talking to me. And I remember, like, I don't know if you know what his voice sounds like, but, like, I felt like I was in the presence of his monster inside. And I remember, like, looking in his eyes, and I said to him, "What did y'all do?" Because I could see that she was, like, really sedated. That was the first time I ever seen her, like, high before. And then he says, "Tell your girl she wants some birthday." And we were like, well, I mean, he's saying this to me, and I'm like, well, she doesn't have to have sex with you if she doesn't want to. He was upset, like, you know, I guess that she didn't want to do with him whatever he wanted. I don't know. I don't feel like I could advocate for myself in that moment. Like, I realized, like, oh, this guy is dangerous.
After this freak-off, Diddy and Cassie went back to the hotel room that she was staying in, where some of her friends were already hanging out. Diddy was severely intoxicated, and at one point during the night, Cassie recalls he picked up one of her friends like a child and dangled the friend over the balcony of the 17th floor hotel suite. The freak-offs became work for Cassie, and despite her objections, Diddy insisted on these intricately staged and forced sexual encounters between her and various male sex workers. Anytime Cassie tried to create distance between her and Diddy, he used his networks to find her before sending his employees to lure her back to his abuse. In 2011, during a rough patch in their relationship, Cassie had a brief relationship with musician Kid Cudi. When Diddy returned from a trip, he demanded another freak-off, but this time, something else was about to occur. During the session, Diddy found Cassie's phone and saw emails between her and the musician. He became enraged and placed a manual corkscrew between his fingers and lunged at Cassie. She ran away to stay at the musician's home to escape Diddy's wrath. However, feeling like she could not escape him and his network of enforcers, she returned to Diddy. He hit her several times and then kicked her in the back as she tried to run out the door. She went to her parents' home in Connecticut, where her mother took pictures of the bruises he left on her body. In February 2012, during Paris Fashion Week, Diddy told Cassie he was going to blow up Kid Cudi's car. Sometime after, his car exploded in his driveway. Cassie was terrified as she began to fully comprehend what Diddy was both willing and able to do to those he believed had slighted him. In 2015, Cassie spoke to a popular music manager at an after-party in a hotel suite in Las Vegas. Diddy saw them speaking and sternly told her to step into the bedroom adjoining the suite. In the bedroom, Diddy beat her severely. She ran from corner to corner of the room trying to avoid his beating and kicking. When she tried to lock herself in the bathroom, he pushed through and punched and kicked her while she curled up under the toilet. Her screams were drowned out by the loud music playing in the outside area of the hotel suite. When Diddy's head of security and assistants saw Cassie after the assault, they began to cry. She had 2 black eyes, a burst and bruised lip, and a huge welt on her forehead. Upon seeing the results of his vicious attack, Diddy immediately took steps to conceal his wrongdoing, forcing her to stay at his home in Holmby Hills.
The first time I experienced it was 2010, and I was in the hotel room when Puff came in, and I had no idea Cassie left. And when I woke up, I just saw his presence come into the room. They went into the bedroom and shut the door, and all I could hear is screaming and yelling and whatever was going on in there, I don't know. And once she came out of the room, she was badly, beaten.
Oh my God. What did her physical appearance look like?
I mean, it was knots on her head, black eye, busted lip, but a lot of knots all over her head.
In or around March 2016, during a freak-off at the Intercontinental Hotel in Century City, Los Angeles, Diddy became extremely intoxicated and punched Cassie in the face, giving her a black eye. After he fell asleep, she tried to leave the hotel room, but as she exited, he awoke and began screaming at her. He followed her into the hallway of the hotel while yelling at her. He grabbed her, tossed her to the ground, and forcefully kicked her twice, before dragging her like she was nothing more than rubbish. He then took glass vases in the hallway and threw them at her, causing glass to crash around them as she ran to the elevator to escape. She managed to get into the elevator, and when she got to the lobby, quickly took a cab to her apartment. Upon realizing that her running away would cause him to be even angrier with her and completely stuck in his vicious cycle of abuse, she returned to the hotel with the intention of apologizing for running away from her abuser. When she returned, hotel security staff urged her to get back into a cab and go to her apartment, suggesting that they had seen the security footage. Upon information and belief, Diddy allegedly paid the hotel $50,000 for the hallway security footage from that evening. After this, Cassie left her home in Comstock and went to hide away at a friend's home in Florida. She alleges that James Cruz, former president of Bad Boy Management, tracked her down and told her that her single would not be released if she did not answer Diddy's phone calls. A woman who worked at Sony Music reached out to her with a similar ultimatum concerning her record. Incredibly, Diddy even convinced one of his attorneys to call Cassie at this time. This lawyer told her that it's in her best interest to call Diddy back. Each time she tried to run away, Diddy and his powerful network would force her back to him. Cassie felt that saying no to Diddy would cost her something: her family, her friends, her career, or even her life. At the leaking of the years-old video, the hotel was thrust into the spotlight with much criticism as to how they could know such cruelty occurred, yet cover it up. In an attempt to remove themselves from the public's outrage, the hotel chain released a statement separating themselves from any involvement.
Representatives for Sean Combs did not respond to our request for comment. Now, in November, that lawsuit that Cassie had filed, she alleges that Sean Diddy Combs paid the hotel $50,000 for that hallway security footage that you just saw. But in a statement to NBC News, IHG Hotels and Resorts said, quote, "This hotel is no longer under IHG management, and we do not have any access to prior incident records or footage," adding that they did not receive money for this footage.
Unfortunately, around the same time, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office released a statement in relation to the video. According to the document, they will be unable to charge Diddy for the brutal assault, as it occurred in 2016, which is outside their statute of limitations. That, however, doesn't mean federal prosecutors will overlook the crime. According to celebrity attorney Gloria Alfred, Diddy could still face federal charges after authorities recovered electronic devices during raids on his homes.
They said they could not prosecute him now because this conduct occurred in 2016. In other words, it's too late now. It's not within the period of time called the statute of limitations to file a criminal charge against him. It would not at all surprise me if the Justice Department of Justice, and the federal prosecutors are taking a look at this video. And obviously they are investigating. We all know they did recently 2 searches of his homes, both in Florida and in California. Generally, the federal government doesn't do that unless they feel there's substantial evidence. And they don't generally do it unless at some point later they do seek an indictment against him and then file charges. And Homeland Security generally is involved in sex trafficking investigations. And this very well could turn out to be a case. Of course, we have to see if the evidence would support it. Very similar to singer R. Kelly's case, where he ended up being charged with sex trafficking, violations of RICO, Racketeering Influence Corrupt Organizations Act.
A few days after the hotel incident, Diddy had his arms around her on the red carpet at the movie premiere for The Perfect Match, which Cassie starred in alongside Terrence J. On her arm, bruises were barely visible through the makeup attempt at a cover-up. In an interview on that same red carpet, a scar right above her eye, matching her bandaged wound, was clear through the makeup as well.
Red says Cassie recently told her about Diddy giving her a black eye before the premiere of her 2016 film, The Perfect Match.
I remember one time her telling me that, I think it might have been The Perfect Match, that movie that she was in, and she told me that she had a black eye under her makeup.
It's alleged that this was the movie that Cassie was referring to when she recalled Diddy threatening an actor she had a flirtatious relationship with while filming on set. It's alleged that actor was Terrence J. By 2017 and 2018, Cassie became desperate to leave Diddy and his abuse. She recognized that if she stayed with him, she would never be able to have a successful career or ever be physically and mentally safe. In September 2018, she joined him for a dinner at an Italian restaurant in Malibu, California, for what she believed would be a discussion about concluding their relationship for good. After dinner, they returned to her home, which was paid for by Diddy. He forced himself into her apartment and tried to kiss her. She told him to stop and attempted to push him away. He then forcibly pulled off her clothing and unbuckled his belt. He proceeded to have intercourse with her against her will, while she repeatedly said no and tried to push him away. Soon thereafter, Cassie took steps to completely separate herself from her longtime abuser, including leaving the home that he paid for and returning the car he purchased for her. Attempting to remove herself from his clutches, she also entered into contracts to end her record deal with Bad Boy Entertainment. As a result of the immense trauma Cassie endured for over a decade with Diddy, she has suffered and continues to suffer from immense emotional distress. Following her escape from the cycle of abuse and sex trafficking she endured, she struggled with the physical and mental manifestations of her trauma. The birth of her 2 children and marrying the now love of her life once more gave her purpose. She credits her children with saving her from the trauma that had consumed over a decade of her life. Cassie struggled with her addictions to drugs and alcohol, which were established and fueled by Diddy. She turned to substances to drown out the memories of her abuse. Without being intoxicated, she suffered from horrific nightmares of the abuse, exploitation, and forced sexual acts she endured at his hands. During this time, she frequently had thoughts of unaliving herself. Through rehab therapy and unparalleled determination to find herself again, Cassie clawed herself from the darkness she lived through back into the light. These details of her abuse and trauma through her relationship with Diddy are expressed in vivid detail in her lawsuit. Diddy has since been hit with multiple other lawsuits by other women and had his homes raided by the FBI in an ongoing investigation for numerous appalling allegations.
April Lampros, according to documents filed in New York County Supreme Court, says she met Sean Diddy Combs in early 1994 while she was attending the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. She says Combs promised her mentorship, invited her to parties, and showered her with gifts. But according to the filing, those gestures became abusive, and Combs began to show a terrible temper and often threatened Lampros. She alleges 4 encounters with Combs, including one in 1995, where Lampros says Combs raped her in a New York City hotel, and then another incident that year where she alleges an attendant witnessed Combs sexually assault her in a parking garage. According to the documents, when Lampros tried to distance herself from Combs, he retaliated by having her fired from her job.
There are sources that are telling CNN that the majority of the people currently suing Diddy are actually speaking to federal investigators, which indicates the Justice Department might be moving close to an indictment.
In a world exclusive, The Sun can reveal that a former New York detective claims the case against superstar rapper P. Diddy could be as bad as Epstein.
This definitely borders on the Jeffrey Epstein case because it has all the components. You have the sex trafficking, you have guns, you have drugs, and you have high-profile celebrities and maybe even politicians or people of influence that might be on these tapes. It has all the makings of a similarity to what Diddy's case is. I think they're looking at this case more like a RICO because it has all the components of that, which is a racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. So you have a leader of a particular group, which would be Diddy, and then you have people that are working under him. So these are all the components of a federal case because it crossed state lines.
Originally, Diddy denied every allegation brought up by Cassie, but with the leak of the hotel footage of the brutal attack, the world saw the dark side of the hip-hop mogul behind the ruse of his persona to be all about love.
My real life is my art, and so there's been different eras. So there's been the Puff Daddy era, the P. Diddy era. Then I dropped the P, then it was the Diddy era.
Yeah.
And now This is the ultimate goal. I have become love.
Suddenly, Diddy was backpedaling and released an apology video that sounded like an actor reading from a script.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life, but sometimes you gotta do that. I was up. I mean, I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted. I was disgusted then when I did it, I'm disgusted now. I went and I sought out professional help. I had to go into therapy, and go into rehab. Had to ask God for his mercy and grace. I'm so sorry. But I'm committed to be a better man each and every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm truly sorry.
The walls were crumbling, and beneath it, the truth about Diddy began being visible. Cassie and her attorney, along with her husband, broke their silence to release statements on what was just exposed to the world.
In a statement, Ventura's attorney said Combs' apology is more about himself than the many people he has hurt, that he was only compelled to apologize once his repeated denials were proven false, shows his pathetic desperation.
When Cassie and multiple other women came forward, he denied everything and suggested that his victims were looking for a payday. They go on to say that he was only compelled to apologize once repeated denials were proven false.
Men who hit women aren't men. Men who enable it and protect those people aren't men. To all the women and children, I'm sorry you live in a world where you're not protected and you don't feel equal. To the abusers, you're done. You're not safe anymore. You're not protected anymore.
For all the love and support from my family, friends, strangers, and those I have yet to meet, the outpouring of love has created a place for my younger self to settle and feel safe now. Domestic violence is the issue. It broke me down to someone I never thought I would become. With a lot of hard work, I am better today, but I will always be recovering from my past. My only ask is that everyone open your heart to believing victims the first time. It takes a lot of heart to tell the truth out of a situation that you were powerless in.
The powerful and abusive billionaire has his back against the wall. Is this the end of his era of abuse and alleged crimes, or will his wealth save him from justice, just like so many other powerful men before him? If you're a victim of his abuse who feared losing your life for speaking up, or if you didn't have the strength on your own, Cassie's bravery has led the charge in opening the doors for other victims to speak up. I hope you finally feel like you can be heard. May justice be served for the truths in any of the allegations brought up against him. For more true crime documentaries, check out one of the videos on the screen. This has been an episode of Mystories, where true stories from around the world come to life. What stories come next? Like, share, comment, and subscribe to never miss what intriguing chronicles will be told.